Hey, I'm Shane Smith, the owner of Genesis Off-Road, and in this video I'm going to show you just how easy it is to install our dual battery system for the 2014 and up Toyota Tundra. Our dual battery systems are designed to protect your cranking battery from being drained down by your aftermarket accessories. So let me show you what comes in this kit. You're going to get a new heavy-duty steel battery tray and all the hardware that it takes to get it installed, which is not that much. It's pretty simple. And you're going to get this top plate which holds the batteries down. This is going to come completely pre-wired for you out of the box, so there's no wiring for you to do at all. So if you're not electrically inclined, that's okay. You don't have to touch a pair of wire strippers to install this kit. Other than that, you're going to need a set of Group 25 size batteries. Now we like the Odyssey brand of batteries because they've got the most cold cranking amps and the most reserve time that you can shoehorn in there. But you can use any brand of battery that you like. It's just got to be a Group 25 to fit our battery tray. Before we get started on the install, I'll give you a quick look at how everything fits in here and we'll go over all the components. Okay, so this is where the original battery sat. Here's your factory fuse box here. So this system puts two Group 25 batteries in the stock battery location. Now this one over here is designated as your cranking battery because it has your factory positive post clamp on it. Now this positive post clamp here feeds power to your fuse box, your starter, and your alternator. This one over here is designated as the accessory battery because this one feeds your power and ground bus bars here. So all of the accessories that you hook up to these little power and ground bus bars will run on this battery only when the batteries are isolated. So this right here is our Cole-Hersey Smart Battery Isolator Controller. So this is the brains of the operation. So this little device is watching the voltage levels, so when it sees your cranking battery is fully charged, when it's topped off above 13.2 volts for 2 minutes, it'll link the batteries together through this solenoid to charge up the second battery. So what that's doing is it's going to send a signal up here to energize this solenoid, and that will link the two sides of the solenoid together through there, and that will link the positive wires together in parallel. Now your negative wires are connected together all the time with this long wire. Now the batteries are going to remain connected together until they drain down to approximately 12.7 volts for 1 minute. And then the controller will send a signal to open the contacts on the solenoid, and that separates these two batteries. At that point, all of your accessories over here are going to be running off of the accessory battery only and not draining down your cranking battery. So the whole point of the system here is to make sure you can always start your engine. But what happens if your cranking battery is too low for some reason? Something drains down your cranking battery. Well, we've got a backup plan for that. Right here is your boost button. Press this momentary button one time and release it. You'll hear the solenoid click, and then you'll be using the power from the second battery to help start the engine, just like this. Now you'll have 1 minute to go around, start the engine. If you do not start the engine within 1 minute, it'll automatically separate the batteries again to keep the cranking battery from getting drained any further. Now, if you want to keep an eye on the status of your batteries from inside the cab, you can also add on our optional G-screen monitoring system. That's going to plug into this little port under the dust cover right here. So you can check out our other videos for more info about the optional G-screen monitoring system. So this kit for the Tundra is really easy to install, but don't skip ahead just yet. I'm going to walk you through it step by step so you get it installed right the first time without any mistakes. Let's get started by removing the factory battery with a 10mm socket. The factory tie-down bracket also uses a 10mm socket. And carefully lift your battery out of the way. You can also remove the factory plastic battery tray. We won't need this. Now let's see how our new battery tray fits down in here. We'll take our new battery tray, lower it right down in here. Now since there's really no good factory points to tie into for this battery tray, I'm going to show you a few tips on how you can get it in the right position. You'll see here our tray is going to sit immediately above this little sheet metal tab right here, and it's going to touch up against the little leg on the fuse box mount. Over here you should have a little bit of clearance before you get into the engine. So you should not be touching the engine. Over here, you got one of your AC hoses. This is flexible, so you can move out of the way if you need to. And right down here, there should be nothing in your way. This is one of your air conditioner lines, but that's well out of the way. Right over here is your headlight assembly, and these factory wires should go underneath the battery tray, so those shouldn't cause any interference. Now, before you start drilling the holes to secure the battery tray down, we're going to go ahead and install our batteries and make sure they clear everything. We're going to install the accessory battery first. We're going to slide it all the way over towards the fender, and then drop in the cranking battery. Make sure they're sitting level with each other. Check your clearance behind the headlight and by the engine. The front corner should clear the radiator and all the hoses. You shift the tray around as needed to get it in the best spot. Now we're going to make some alignment marks here to make sure the tray doesn't move out of position when we remove the batteries. Let's put a couple marks here, then we can get the tray lined back up later. Now we're going to carefully remove the batteries. You can hold the tray while you slide this battery sideways and lift it up so the tray doesn't move too much, and then lift it straight up. Now just check all your clearances again, make sure the tray didn't move. Now once we got the tray where we want it, we're going to take a center punch like this and mark our holes to drill. Now let's just take our tray out and we'll be ready to drill the holes. Now we're going to start by drilling these out with a small pilot hole first, and then we're going to finish it off with a 25/64 inch drill bit. Now if you don't have a 25/64, please stop now, run to your local hardware store, get the right size drill bit. It's real important to drill these out to the right size so the nutserts will seat properly. Use a touch-up paint pen like this to cover up the bare sheet metal on the holes we just drilled. Now to install these little nutserts, you could use a nutsert installation tool like this. So if you have one of these, I'm going to assume you already know how to use it. But in your hardware baggie, we give you a little kit for installing these nutserts. Let me show you how these work. Let's take this grade 8 bolt and this thick grade 8 washer. We'll put the washer on there. And then we're going to slide the bolt through this flanged head nut here. That's just going to slide right through. It's not going to thread onto it. And then let's assume this washer here represents the sheet metal that we just put the nutsert into. So once we drop this in here, we want to compress this nutsert so it's going to bite against the back side of the sheet metal. So to do that, we're going to take our little install tool here, thread that onto the nutsert, and then we're going to use a 1/2 inch wrench on the bottom nut, and then use a 7/16 wrench or a socket to tighten this bolt down. And when you tighten that down, you'll feel the bottom side of this nutsert compressing all the way until it bottoms out. And that'll be when it's biting into the bottom side of the sheet metal. So when you're done, this is what it looks like. The bottom side of that nutsert has compressed up against the back side of the sheet metal, and those serrations there are biting into the sheet metal to hold it in place. Now that we have our nutserts installed down in here, we're ready to reinstall the tray and bolt it down. We'll drop our tray in, get it lined up with the nutserts. Now I'll hold the tray down with these 4 stainless bolts and washers with a 7/16 socket. And we'll snug those up with our ratchet. Now we're ready to reinstall our batteries, starting with the accessory battery. Slide that one all the way over. And then our cranking battery. Double check all your clearances around here, make sure you don't have anything in the way, no interference. Now before we set our top plate on here, make sure you've still got your little caps on these battery posts here. We're about to set a large piece of metal up on top of these batteries. We don't want anything shorting out up here. So we're going to drop our lid in place with the lion head logo facing the front of the vehicle. Then we'll use the bolts that came in the hardware baggie to secure the lid down. Now these front bolts are under this front radiator support here, so they're a little bit tricky. We're just going to get these fingered tight for right now. Then the other 2 bolts. Now if you're using Odyssey batteries, you may notice there's a small gap between the top lid and the face of the battery tray. This is there on purpose. So we left this little gap here in case you're using a different brand of batteries that are slightly smaller. You don't have to squish it all the way down where you damage the batteries. Just get it nice and snug. Now we're ready to start connecting our wires. I'm going to start with the accessory battery positive first. So I'm going to pull off this little cap, put this wire onto this post, and then we're going to tighten this up with a 1/2-inch wrench. Then we'll do our cranking battery positive. Pull this cap off. Now if this is a little bit hard to get on there, you can loosen this 12mm nut right here to give a little bit of play so you can get that post clamp on there. And we'll tighten this one up with a 10mm wrench. Now our cranking battery negative. And tighten that one up with a 1/2-inch wrench. And then finally we'll do our factory negative on the accessory battery. And tighten that post clamp with a 10mm wrench. Now we can connect our wire to the factory positive here. And tighten that back down with a 12mm. And same thing on the ground. We're going to take this nut off. We're going to install the lead that feeds the ground bus bar first. And then the wire that goes over to the cranking battery negative. And reinstall our 12mm nut. Okay, and that's all there is to it. Last thing we want to do is make sure all 4 of our post clamps are very nice and tight. If any of these post clamps can wiggle even a little bit, it can cause you some bizarre electrical gremlins. So make sure these are all tight. Now let's fire up the engine and see if everything works. Looks good. Now here's a couple other little tips for you. If you want to tidy things up a little bit, if you would like to reuse this factory positive cover plate here, you can take a razor blade and just notch this right here to fit around our new red wire to put that back in place. And then also you see I've got my factory ground wire running right through here on top of the fuse box. I'm just going to tuck that down beside the battery tray out of the way. And that'll make it easier to get to the fuse box if we need to. Now you should still be able to get to your fuse box cover with this little tab right here, but if you're having a hard time getting your finger down there, just use a little flathead screwdriver to pry that latch and the fuse box cover will pop right off. Now since our power and ground bus bars are over here closer to the fender, you've got a good bit of space here in front of the fender for tucking your wires, your inline fuses, your relays, anything like that can go right down in there. And just remember, you don't want to run any aftermarket accessory wires to your cranking battery. So the only thing that should be on the cranking battery is the factory fuse box, the alternator, and the starter. That way all of your aftermarket stuff will run off the second battery when they're isolated and not drain down your cranking battery. So here's a few more quick tips for you. So be aware that when the batteries are linked together through this silver solenoid here, there will be a current that flows back and forth between the batteries, and that does generate heat in the solenoid. So it's completely normal for the solenoid to be hot, even very hot to the touch. But don't worry, it's nothing to worry about. It's completely normal. Another question we get a lot is how to use jumper cables. So if you need to jump start someone else, or if you need to jump start your own vehicle, if your cranking battery and your accessory battery are dead for some reason, and you need to jump your own vehicle, you can hook your jumper cable straight to the factory positive and factory negative post clamps. That's going to give you the most direct path to your alternator and your starter. All right, we're all done. If I missed anything, leave me a comment down below, or you can shoot me an email at info@genesisoffroad.com, or feel free to give me a call, 901-214-5337. If this video was helpful to you, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. I will have some more helpful tech tip videos in the future. Thanks for watching.